She was my best friend for 11 years. We met in college, survived our 20s together, stood in each other's weddings. I thought I knew her better than I knew myself, and then I got promoted. Nothing dramatic happened at first. She congratulated me. She said she was proud. She posted about it on social media with heart emojis and exclamation points, but something shifted. The text became shorter, the calls became less frequent. When we did talk, there was this edge in her voice I'd never heard before, little comments that felt like paper cuts. Must be nice to have that salary. I guess some of us are just luckier than others. We probably don't have time for regular people anymore. I tried to ignore it. I made excuses. She's stressed. She's going through something. It's not about me, but it was about me. It was specifically, precisely, exactly about me. My success had become her failure in some equation, and I didn't know we were calculating. And within 18 months, the friendship was over. Not with a fight, not with a dramatic confrontation. It just dissolved like sugar and water until one day I realized we hadn't spoken in 6 months and neither of us had reached out. I'm telling you this story because a woman told it to me word for word almost. And then another woman told me a similar story and another, until I started to wonder if this was coincidence or pattern. Until I started asking questions I wasn't sure I wanted answers to. Does female friendship actually exist? Or is it something else entirely? Something more conditional and fragile than anyone wants to admit. Let me be free speed further. I'm not here to bash women. I'm not here to claim that all female friendships are fake or that women are incapable of genuine connection. That would be stupid, reductive, and obviously false. What I am here to do is examine patterns I've observed, patterns that women themselves have described to me, patterns that get dismissed or denied because acknowledging them feels like betrayal. But patterns don't care about feelings. They exist whether we acknowledge them or not. And pretending they don't exist doesn't make them go away. It just makes us less equipped to navigate reality. The stereotype that female friendship doesn't exist is everywhere. It's in movies, in jokes, in casual conversation. Women roll their eyes at it. They dismiss it as sexism. They point to their own friendships as evidence that it's nonsense. And in many individual cases, they're right. Real female friendship absolutely exists. I've seen it. I've watched women support each other through impossible circumstances with loyalty that would shame most men. But the stereotype persists because it's pointing at something. Not at all female friendships, at certain dynamics that appear often enough to be recognizable. Denying those dynamics exist doesn't disprove the stereotype. It just prevents honest examination. Let me start with the comparison that always gets made. Male friendship versus female friendship. The narrative goes something like this. Men are simple. They show up. They hang out. They don't talk about feelings. They don't compete covertly. They don't analyze every interaction for hidden meaning. Male friendship is portrayed as loyal, uncomplicated, resilient. Two guys cannot speak for 5 years and then pick up exactly where they left off. Meanwhile, female friendship is portrayed as a minefield, complicated, fragile, prone to explosion without warning, full of subtext and second meanings and emotional landmines. Is this accurate? Partially. Like most stereotypes, it contains a grain of truth wrapped in exaggeration. Male friendships do tend to be lower maintenance. They're often built around activities rather than emotional processing. Two guys watching football together aren't required to discuss their feelings about the game. They just watch. This creates a certain simplicity that can be mistaken for depth. Meanwhile, female friendships often involve more emotional labor, more processing, more maintenance. This isn't weakness, it's a different model. But the different model does create different failure modes. Here's what I've observed about those failure modes. And again, I'm not saying this applies to all women or all friendships. I'm describing patterns that appear often enough to warrant discussion. The first pattern is what I call competitive undercurrent. Many female friendships contain an element of comparison that operates beneath the surface of expressed support. She's happy for you, but she's also measuring herself against you. Your success raises a question about her own trajectory. Your failure provides a data point that reassures her about her own choices. This comparison isn't always conscious. It's often denied, even when pointed out directly. But it runs like an underground river beneath many female relationships, occasionally surfacing in moments of tension. I've watched this play out so many times. Two friends, roughly similar life situations. One gets a promotion, a boyfriend, a weight loss, a new car, whatever. The surface response is celebration. The underlying response is recalculation. What does this mean about me? The friendship works smoothly when both parties are on similar levels. The moment one pulls ahead significantly, something shifts. The supportive words continue, but the energy changes. There's a subtle cooling, a slight distance, evaluative quality that wasn't there before. Why does this happen? I think it's because many female friendships are partially built on mutual validation. We're in this together. We understand each other. We're at the same level. When one friend advances, that foundation cracks. The shared experience of similarity disappears, and without it, what's left? Sometimes genuine connection that transcends circumstance. Sometimes nothing but the comparison that was always there, now impossible to ignore. Let me talk about secrets and gossip because this is where the stereotype gets its sharpest teeth. The claim is that women can't keep secrets, that telling a woman something confidential is equivalent to posting it on a billboard, that gossip is the lifeblood of female social connection, so irresistible that even trusted friends can't contain it. Is this fair? Not entirely. Men gossip too. Anyone who spent time in a male-dominated workplace knows that information flows through male networks just as readily as female ones. But there does seem to be a difference in how gossip functions socially. For many women, sharing information is a bonding activity. Secrets become social currency. The act of telling someone something confidential creates intimacy. I'm trusting you with this. And then that person creates intimacy with someone else by sharing the same secret. You won't believe what I just heard. The chain continues until the original secret is common knowledge. I've heard women describe this with a kind of resigned acceptance. If you tell a woman a secret, assume it's going to spread. Some women place their own information accordingly, revealing only what they're comfortable becoming public. Others learn the hard way that their deepest confidences became entertainment for people they've never met. And here's the part that rarely gets said out loud. If she's telling you other people's secrets, she's probably telling other people yours. The woman who entertains you with gossip about mutual acquaintances, who leans in conspiratorially to share something she heard, she's demonstrating her relationship to confidential information. And her relationship is that confidential information is shareable. You might think you're special. You might think your secrets are different. They're not. You're in the same category as everyone else she tells you about. You just don't know it because you're not in the room when your information gets shared. Now let's address the claim that female friendships collapse when men enter the picture. The accusation is that women secretly compete for male attention, that girl code evaporates when attraction is involved, that friends will undermine each other or outright steal each other's partners when given the opportunity. This is where the stereotype gets genuinely ugly. And I want to be careful here because I know plenty of women who would never under any circumstances pursue a friend's partner. Women who take loyalty to their female relationships more seriously than almost anything else. But I've also heard enough stories to know that the opposite exists too. Friends who flirted with boyfriends, friends who slept with exes, friends who, in one memorable case I heard about, married the husband of a woman she'd known for 20 years. What drives this? Competition, certainly. The idea that another woman's man is somehow more valuable because he's already been validated by female choice, but also opportunity. Proximity creates temptation. The friend who's always around, who knows him, who has access, she's in a position that outsiders aren't. And if her loyalty to her friend is weaker than her desire for him, or her need for validation, or her competitive instinct, she might act on that position. I think the honest assessment is that some women have strong loyalty that male attention doesn't threaten, and some women have conditional loyalty that crumbles under the right circumstances. The question is which type your friends are, and you might not know until the circumstances arrive. Let me talk about jealousy and social comparison because this underpins everything I've described. The claim is that female friendship survives only when both parties are on relatively equal footing. Once one friend advances significantly, whether through career success, financial gain, romantic achievement, physical transformation, whatever, jealousy appears and poisons the connection. I've seen this so many times it feels almost mechanical. Friend A gets something friend B wants. Friend B experiences a complex emotional response that includes happiness for friend A and pain for herself. The pain gets suppressed because expressing it would be socially unacceptable, but suppression isn't elimination. The pain remains now coated with resentment about having to hide it, and that resentment leaks out in subtle ways. The congratulations that don't quite reach the eyes, the slight cooling of enthusiasm, the sudden business that makes connection less frequent. Some women are aware of this dynamic in themselves and fight against it. They recognize their jealousy, name it, work to not let it poison their friendships. Others don't seem to recognize it at all. They experience their cooling feelings as justified by some fault of the successful friend. She's changed. She doesn't have time for me anymore. She's become arrogant. The jealousy gets reframed as a legitimate grievance, and the friendship ends with the successful friend confused about what she did wrong when what she did wrong would succeed. This is where the backhanded compliments enter, the insult disguised as praise. You look amazing, I could never pull off that dress with my body type. Wait, what? Your apartment is so cozy, I prefer more space, but this really works for you. Hold on, he seems really nice. I usually go for more ambitious guys, but stability is important too. What exactly are you saying? These comments create confusion because they're delivered with smiles and friendly tones. The surface reads as supportive. The subtext reads as attack. And if you call it out, you're the one being sensitive. I was complimenting you. Why are you being defensive? The plausible deniability is built in. She knows what she's doing. You know what she's doing. But proving it will require dissecting language in ways that make you look paranoid. This passive-aggressive style extends into what I'd call emotional bullying in groups. The target and bond dynamic where female friend groups identify a weak link and create cohesion through subtle mockery of her. It looks like joking. It feels like exclusion. The jokes are always at her expense. The references she doesn't understand. The inside humor that positions her as outside. And if she's being too sensitive, can't you take a joke? I've watched women describe realizing years later that they were the target friend in a group, that what they experienced as belonging was actually tolerated outsidership, that the group was laughing at them, not with them. The realization is devastating because it recontextualizes years of memories. What she thought was friendship was something else entirely. This connects to another pattern. Friendships built on a common enemy. Two women bond not over what they share, but over who they mutually dislike. Their entire connection is constructed from gossip about third parties, complaints about specific people, and shared criticism of others. They call this friendship. But notice what holds it together. Negativity, the moment they run out of targets, the moment there's no one to criticize. What do they talk about? Often nothing. The friendship evaporates because there's nothing beneath the shared hostility. And here's the dark question that Patton raises. If she bonds with you by criticizing others, what happens when you're not in the room? The same mechanism that created intimacy through shared dislike applies when you're the subject. You might be the common enemy that bonds her to someone else. You never know. That's the point. Let me address loyalty directly because this is where the pattern becomes most clear. The claim is that female loyalty is conditional in ways male loyalty often isn't. That support exists until ego is threatened. That I'm so happy for you turns cold the moment your happiness highlights her unhappiness. That friendship ends when comparison becomes unavoidable. I don't think this describes all female friendships, but I think it describes more than women are comfortable admitting. The woman who supported you during your struggles disappears when you succeed. The woman who celebrated your relationship becomes distant when hers falls apart. The woman who cheered your efforts goes quiet when those efforts produce results she wanted for herself. Why? Because for some people, friendship is partially about feeling okay about their own life by comparison. Your struggle validated her situation. Your success threatens it. When you were down, she could be generous because your position didn't challenge hers. When you're up, her position feels like failure by comparison. And rather than celebrate your rise, she protects her ego by withdrawing. This is harsh. I know it sounds harsh, but I've heard too many women describe exactly this experience for it to be fiction. The friend who was there through the bad times and vanished during the good ones. The friend whose support was real, but whose ego was bigger. The friend who loved you as long as you weren't doing better than her. Now, let me talk about the contrast with male friendship, because this is where the analysis gets interesting. The narrative goes that men are direct. They fight, but they fight openly. If there's a problem, it gets aired. Punches might be thrown, but then it's over. They shake hands and move on. Male conflict is portrayed as clean. Female conflict is portrayed as endless, covert, poisonous. Is this accurate? In some ways, yes. Male communication tends to be more explicit. Problems get named directly rather than expressed through subtext. This can feel brutal, but also clarifying. You know where you stand. Female communication often involves more indirection, more reading between lines, more interpretation of tone and implication. This can feel sophisticated, but also exhausting. You're never quite sure what's actually being said. And male friendships do seem to have a different relationship to time. The guys who reconnect after years of silence and pick up seamlessly. The old roommate who shows up and it's like no time passed. There's something about low-maintenance male connection that allows it to survive neglect in ways that higher maintenance connections often can't. But let's not romanticize male friendship either. Men have their own friendship failures. They avoid emotional depth. They disappear into relationships and emerge only after breakups. They compete over status and success just like anyone else. The simplicity of male friendship is sometimes just shallowness. The lack of drama is sometimes just emotional absence. The resilience is sometimes just not caring that much in the first place. Let me address the "I only have guy friends" phenomenon because this is where the analysis becomes self-aware. Some women claim they can be friends with other women. That female friendship is too complicated, too dramatic, too exhausting. They prefer male friends because men are easier, simpler, less emotionally demanding. What's actually going on here? Sometimes it's genuine. Some women really do have personality types or communication styles that fit better with male social patterns, but often I think something else is happening. The woman who only has male friends is often enjoying something specific about that dynamic. Male attention, male orbiting, the feeling of being the center of a social group rather than one node among equals. Female friendship requires reciprocity. You have to care about her problems the way she cares about yours. You have to support her the way she supports you. There's labor involved. Male friendships, especially for an attractive woman, often require less. The men are happy she's around. They don't demand the same level of emotional investment. They're not competing on the same axis. She gets the benefits of social connection without the costs. This isn't universal, but it's common enough to be recognizable. The woman who says she's not like other girls, who frames female friendship as drama she's too evolved for, is sometimes just avoiding the equality that real female friendship requires. She'd rather be the princess among orbiters than one sister among sisters. Now let me shift gears because I've been describing problems and I want to address solutions. The question isn't whether toxic female friendships exist. They obviously do. The question is whether healthy female friendships are possible. And the answer is obviously yes. They exist. I've seen them. When I ask women about their best, most lasting, most genuine friendships, certain patterns emerge. These friendships survive because both parties were genuinely happy for each other's success. Because comparison existed but didn't override affection. Because they could tell each other hard truths without the friendship fracturing. Because neither tried to position herself as superior. Because they lifted each other up rather than measuring against each other. The sisterhood model, when it works, is powerful. Women supporting women, celebrating each other, protecting each other, being genuinely invested in each other's well-being, without the constant undercurrent of comparison. This exists. I've seen it. I've heard women describe friendships that have lasted decades, survived marriages and divorces and children, and relocations remain strong because both parties prioritize the connection. So, what makes the difference? Why do some female friendships become toxic and others become lifelong sisterhood? I think it comes down to ego security. A woman who feels secure in herself, who isn't constantly measuring her worth against others, who can celebrate someone else's success without experiencing it as her own failure. She can maintain genuine friendships. Her identity doesn't depend on relative positioning. Her self-esteem doesn't require others to stay down so she can feel okay. But a woman who is deeply insecure, whose sense of worth fluctuates based on comparison, who needs to be the prettiest or most successful or most envied in her social group, she struggles with genuine friendship. Every friend's success threatens her. Every friend's advantage feels like her loss. She can't celebrate without comparing. She can't support without measuring. And eventually, she either torpedoes the friendships that threaten her or selects friends who don't challenge her position. The tragedy is that insecure women often don't know they're insecure. They experience their jealousy as legitimate grievance. They frame their comparisons as reasonable assessment. They interpret their friend's success as their friend changing, not as themselves reacting poorly to being outperformed. The lack of self-awareness prevents the self-work that would make genuine friendship possible. And the other factor is emotional investment balance. Genuine friendship requires both parties to invest similarly, to care about each other's lives with similar intensity, to show up with similar consistency. When one friend invests heavily while the other takes without giving, resentment builds. When one friend does all the emotional labor while the other coasts on being supported, the imbalance eventually breaks the connection. Many toxic friendships are actually imbalanced friendships that haven't been recognized as such. She thinks they're close because she invests heavily, but her friend doesn't reciprocate. She's a support system. Her friend is a recipient. Eventually, she realizes the asymmetry. That's when the toxic label appears. but the toxicity was the imbalance, the inequality of care masquerading as mutual friendship. Let me address the evolutionary framing briefly because some people apply it to this topic. The argument goes that women are biologically wired to compete. That rivalry is unconscious and inevitable. That evolution designed women to compete for mates and resources, and this competition expresses itself even in modern friendship. Maybe I'm skeptical of evolutionary psychology explanations because they're often unfalsifiable. Just so stories, but I also can't dismiss them entirely. Human behavior does have evolutionary roots. Competition for resources is a real thing that shaped our psychology. Whether this specifically applies to female friendship dynamics, I honestly don't know. It's an explanation. Whether it's the right explanation requires evidence I don't have. What I do know is that whatever the cause, the dynamics I've described exist, whether they are evolutionary or cultural or individual, they're real, and dealing with them requires honesty about their reality, not denial based on how we wish things were. So, where does this leave us? Does female friendship exist?